I'm a Resident Evil guy. A Resi lad, if you will. I've played through 1, 2, 3, 4. Only part of 5 because... And only part of 6 as well, because... And I've played through 7 and 8. It's safe to say I'm an enjoyer of good Resident Evil. I'm in love with the world and characters of this amazing series. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City released in 2021 to mixed reception. It was directed and written by Johannes Roberts, who is known for shark movies, I guess. I remember being excited for the movie. However, I quite literally forgot about this movie being released. I have no idea why, but I thought it was coming in 2022, and here I am looking like a fool when I Google it and find out that it's already released. So I thought, let's do a little Resi review. Judging by how basically any past adaptation of Resident Evil has been... I am cautiously optimistic, but without further ado, let's get into this. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is not a good movie. In other words, it's actually a bad movie. It's difficult to really get the point across just how bad this movie fumbles every aspect of making a good movie, but I'm gonna try. First of all, this movie is ugly. It's not nice to look at, which is disappointing for an adaptation of a very visually distinct franchise. The cinematography is not good. It often tries different things, but they all come off as amateurish and certainly not visually appealing. The only highlights I can even think of is the long shots that the movie features, which are cool, but considering the rest of the movie is not easy on the eyes, doesn't really mean much. The soundtrack in this movie ranges from alright, with certain motifs from the games being present, which is a nice touch, to actually horrible and almost funny. It suffers from bad horror string effects syndrome and bizarrely uses these really loud, bassy synths frequently that just do not fit the atmosphere of the film itself at all and sound genuinely horrible. They also used the classic trailer boom at one point. I'm not even joking. Hell, most of the original soundtrack actually sounds like it was composed for a trailer. It just doesn't work. The movie gets a lot of locations right visually, which is something positive. RPD and Spencer Mansion both do be looking like the games, but are also covered in CGI. I'm guessing because they didn't want to build physical sets, and the CGI in this film is not pretty to say the least. Everything looks waxy, like it has those upscaled GameCube looking textures. Sure, the models that they're using are accurate to the games, but they definitely shouldn't still look like a video game, which they do. The movie is really heavy on CGI, and it's all terrible. There is not a single scene with CGI in this movie that looks like it was given the proper treatment to not look awful, and it completely removes you from the film every time they use an effect shot, which is very often. For a film with a budget of $40 million, it doesn't ever seem to make you think, oh, that's where the money went. Every special effect shot looks awful. So we all know Resident Evil is a horror franchise. How's the horror here? The horror elements in this movie are extremely lacking. It's chock full of jump scares and cheap tricks. Nothing in this movie is scary or even vaguely off-putting, which is quite an achievement considering the wealth of good material they had to pull from. The infected look mostly fine, with some nice practical makeup being used on them, but their behavior is a far cry from how they are in the games. In Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, they seem to be somewhat coherent, with scenes that show them straight up speaking full sentences, which doesn't work for most zombie media, and certainly not for Resident Evil.
You need help. mierda!
The horror elements in this film just leave you feeling either annoyed by a jump scare or genuinely confused, which is not something most horror enjoyers seek out from the genre. Overall, the presentation of this movie is bad. There is almost nothing positive to say about it. Certain scenes manage to have some semblance of atmosphere that feels appropriate to the series, but it mostly just feels like a C-tier budget horror film that Blumhouse threw like $20,000 at. Okay, so visually, not great. Maybe the writing will be better. It's not. There's essentially zero character setup for any of the main cast. It's just exposition dumps through incredibly clunky and unnatural dialogue, and oh my god, the dialogue in this movie is awkward. It all feels so unnatural and lazy. Nobody in this movie acts like a real person. Just listen to this.
Okay, Chief, what's this all about?
Yeah, what's with the alarm?
Well, if you all shut the hell up for a second and listen, maybe you'll find out. Honestly, I don't know.
Hey.
Oh, Jesus, Valentine, you and that fucking gun!
I don't have time for this.
No, look, okay, so I've been talking to this guy in a chat room.
What the fuck's a chat room?
It's a place on the internet where people chat.
Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City gives zero reasons to care about any of these characters, and considering how the movie attempts to set up Umbrella, which is through a very poor series of Claire flashbacks featuring horrendous child acting that literally happened randomly, you don't even care about what's happening either. It's like they expect people to look at the screen and go, oh my god, I know Leon and Claire, yay, this movie is good, without giving any insight into who they are in any compelling way whatsoever. They don't even really bother to properly introduce all of the main characters. We meet all of them mostly in an early scene that basically boils down to, hey Leon, you're a rookie cop and we're all assholes. The characterization of the established icons is just way off. Jill is just an asshole, Wesker is a pervert and frankly acts absolutely nothing like his game self. Claire acts like 3-make Jill for some reason. Chris basically boils down to, hey, I'm Claire's brother, and that's like his entire character. It's baffling. Leon is the only character that I have anything good to say about in regards to his portrayal here. He's close to remake Leon in terms of how he acts. He's in over his head and he isn't afraid to express that, yet he has an air of confidence regardless of how the odds seem stacked against him. Avan Jogia does a great job here incorporating elements of remake Leon and Resi 4 Leon. The remake aspects of Leon are strong, but watching his performance you can see that his overall attitude and wit is much closer to 4 Leon. I've heard complaints that Leon appears to be watered down and inaccurately represented in this film, and I actually disagree with that. Some fans think he's been reduced to a comedy relief character, which, thinking in the context of the film, doesn't add up to me. All of the humorous scenes with Leon are other characters being really mean towards him for no reason. Leon is not a comedy relief character cracking jokes. The script just happens to have a lot of characters bully him, and just because he doesn't react and maintains his composure doesn't mean he's some stupid slacker type. Honestly, it's generous to even call these scenes comedic. Watch this and tell me it's funny.
Leon S. Kennedy. What's the S stand for, stupid? Come on.
Now, the problem with Leon is that he literally doesn't have to be in this movie. He actually does nothing significant at all here. He's just kind of there along for the ride with Claire, and it's a huge waste of one of the very few parts of this film that I enjoyed. To be fair, he does do one thing at one point, and I think it's literally just because they were like, oh shit, Leon has to do something, guys. We forgot to write any scenes where Leon does something. Since we're given next to no time with Claire and Leon's storylines separate, Leon just ends up feeling like a side character, and it's a shame. There's essentially zero importance given to any characters aside from Claire, and they don't do a particularly good job with her story either, considering the main plot of Resident Evil 2, which is the game where she originates from, is cast aside here to try and fit her in with Resi 1's plot. Speaking of that, easily the film's biggest issue is the narrative direction they took this adaptation. The plot of this film is just exhausting. Basically, the movie attempts to consolidate the stories of Resident Evil 1 and 2 into one film, with both plots happening at the same time, and it really doesn't work at all. The effect this has on the pacing is astronomical. Shit literally just happens in this movie with next to no setup at all because both plots are racing to cram enough story to be coherent in a less than 2-hour long movie. The movie gives you a feeling of whiplash with the way it will constantly jump from event to event with seemingly everything important in between trimmed for time or something. The movie wastes so much time on shit that literally does not matter. Not for the story of the film, nor establishing its world or characters. An easy example of this is the entirely unnecessary inclusion of Chief Irons. Chief Irons has multiple scenes dedicated to him in this film that quite literally do not contribute to furthering the narrative at all. He is literally only in the film to explain that Raccoon City has been sealed shut and that there's a path to the Spencer Mansion through Umbrella Orphanage, which could have been relayed to Leon and Claire in any other way instead of giving him dedicated solo scenes that go on for far too long. But no, instead the very little character interaction we get between Leon and Claire, you know, the protagonists of the game, is watered down by this dickhead being with them for over half of the movie's entire runtime and contributing nothing of substance. It makes no sense to waste so much screen time on characters that don't matter in this movie. The movie has a relatively short runtime and a wealth of characters that actually need to be developed, so why are we wasting time here? It's so strange that this movie almost expects you to have a base understanding of Resi while also punishing you for having knowledge of the series. It's genuinely a massive slap in the face to fans and to a new audience because I actually can't fathom a non-Resident Evil fan comprehending what the hell is being shown to them. All characters are half-baked and rely on you being at least somewhat familiar with them to have any interest in the plot. The events of Resident Evil 2 are largely boiled down to Dr. Birkin exposition, vague references, set pieces, and hey, Leon and Claire exist. Since they tried to make these two storylines happen congruently, it causes the plot of Resident Evil 1 to be cut in half, basically ignoring Wesker's entire arc, half the stars even doing anything, and has the entire Spencer Mansion being speed ran through Golden Split style, nearly entirely skipping an extremely interesting arc of the series. Those reasons make watching this movie genuinely frustrating. Both plots from the games are begging for good adaptations, and it really wouldn't be hard. There's so much lore to expand on and explore here. Why try to condense them so much? Is it just because they wanted Leon and Claire in the movies, since they're arguably the most recognizable characters from the series? If this film had taken the franchise one game at a time, first adapting Resident Evil 1, focusing on the mystery of the Spencer Mansion and the shady practices of Umbrella, actually taking time to establish the world and characters of Resident Evil, it would be far more compelling. On top of this, how the hell would you even approach a sequel here? It's now impossible to do Resi 3 because they conclude the Raccoon City era, jumping to the destruction of the city by the end of the film. And I don't think I'm in the minority in saying that Resident Evil 4 is not exactly an easy adaptation to approach. I don't even know how Capcom is going to do it for the remake, considering the new tone they've established through the remake so far, let alone the team behind this film, if that's the direction they want to head. Their approach here literally doesn't make sense. They rushed over so much approachable and great story content to do this horribly paced garbage. Nobody wins here. The director/writer claims he made this movie as a fan and for fans, and I frankly find that impossible to believe looking at the end product. Yes, there are lots of nods to the game series, but obviously that didn't make for a good film whatsoever. Most of the game references lack any substance or contribution to the narrative. It's literally like, oh yeah, I remember when that was in the game, and good. It's not good here, but shoving fan service into the audience's face accomplishes nothing towards making this movie worth your time. It's a mess, and any fan of Resident Evil with base media comprehension skills will take this movie as an utter joke. Hell, any person who wanted to see a good movie will. So, those are my thoughts on Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. It was a disappointing mess that made me unintentionally laugh out loud more than a handful of times. I went into this film with my expectations on the floor and I was still let down because I didn't even get a cohesive film. It's a disservice to moviegoers, Resident Evil as a series, Resident Evil fans, and the actors who are actually trying to work with what they're given. I don't recommend this movie at all. Just as a film, it's so bad. The potential wasted here is truly something to behold. The future of Resi movies is going to be dead in the water for some time now until another studio decides to take the risk, and that sucks because it really would be cool and not hard to give this series the adaptation it deserves, but here we are. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is another unfortunate failed video game film. On top of that, it's a failure of a film at its core, where its $40 million budget never seems to show its face. Hey, thanks so much for watching my video. If you liked it, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me, and it would help the channel so much. I had a lot of fun covering a movie this time on the channel. If that's something you'd want to see more of, don't be shy to let me know in the comments, or if you have any other videos you'd want to see from me. I think that's about everything for this video, so until next time, love ya. Mwah.